Good evening, everybody. You just stumbled upon Grader'S Notes here live on the Comic Head 84 channel, the premier home of the most thorough comic book reviews and breakdowns in the game, the Grader'S Notes crew. We leave no stone unturned, no armpit untickled, my friends. And it's not just me. We've assembled the greatest grading panel in the land. And without further ado, let's just bring them on in. I'm going to start at the top of the globe and work my way down. So we're starting up with the Great White North. David, Mr. Miracle, a.k.a. Double C, Canadian Curmudgeon. What's up, man?
Double C. I kind of like that one. Yeah, great pick, Kenny. So
Yeah, thanks.
This is a classic. If
Yeah,
you're comic collecting and kind of our age, then for sure you grab this off the shelf. This was a reprint I was just talking about that came out 2010-ish, something like that. I bought, which had both. So I was lucky I had this because I didn't have issue number 2. But yeah, and I know, Kenny, you and I, big Galactus fans. Right?
Oh, yeah.
We're
We
all
both got
over
it
that.
cemented on ourselves, yes.
I know, right? Like, that's something that you and I have like totally in common right there. So when you picked this book, I was like, yes, of course it is. So excited to get into this one today.
Heck yeah, man. I agree. And let's move on our way down to Mr. Genome Presents. There's Galactus looming in the background as we speak.
Always behind me, burgeoning me up for this great Grader'S Notes.
Are you the new Herald, Gino?
I could be the new Herald of Galactus. I pushed Hulks and T-Rex or whatever. They're all T-Rex is gone. It's now Genome, G-Rex. So yeah, I'll be the next Galactus of Herald. Just keep me out of West Virginia. That's.
When he asked you for your experience, did you say you're really good at finding burger joints, so it could probably cross over?
That's true. I mean, like, if we can get a guy to cure his hunger right here in planet Earth, why not in the cosmic level? There's got to be Jack in a box out past Pluto somewhere, right? So
there you go. And last but not least, of course, the mighty Metarog in the Meta Throne.
How you doing?
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, Kenny. Man, great to be back here on Grader'S Notes. It seems like it's been a while. It's only been 2 weeks, but I really look forward to this every 2 weeks. And yeah, I agree. Great pick here. Very different than what you expect from Stan Lee, I think.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, this is a fun one, I think. And I think, like Miracle said earlier, this is probably, if you've been collecting comics for a while or reading them for a while, you probably have eventually picked up a copy of these because they're, the cover is so alluring. So even if you weren't a big fan, it's at least an eye-catching cover. And I've always found this book to be pretty readily available, too. I don't think it still goes for $2. Did anyone have to buy it, order it?
There's a story. Books are great. I bought it twice, but yeah, actually I bought the second one in a lot. I had to buy the first one solo, and then bought the first one and the second one again in a lot.
Oh, that's right. But they all arrive secured in time.
Yeah, but I think. Oh yeah, actually almost early. But like the solo one was only I think $6 plus shipping, so it really wasn't that expensive at all.
Yeah,
first one.
So a very attainable book, and and if you haven't read it yet, maybe after watching this show, we'll help you decide whether or not you should dish out the $10 or $15 it'll spend you to get both of them. Now, the 5th grader is also present, and that's you, the chat. Big Mark Knapp in the place to be. Good to see you, my friend. What's that profile pic? I like it. I don't know who that is, but I like it. Magic Lasso coming in strong with, wow, that might be a good 15 84s in there. Thank you for always raising my energy levels with your comments, Lasso. Appreciate that. I could use it tonight. Good to see you, my friend. The Jackson Roy Kirk. Always great to see my brother Jackson in the Grader'S Note chat. Benny Compton, straight out of Compton. What's up, my man? Good to see you. Joey Bags, Joey 4777. Good to see you, Joseph. Oh, the co-host of the new show that's taken off like wildfire. Co-host of Simply Super Russ 9000. One half of the team there with Simple Simon. Good to see you, my brother. Genome with a little Harold pun. I like that. Genome, do you still have the Old Faithful sign ready, the banner ready for my man Biggie Shack? In there it is. You know, it's always within arm's reach. Somehow.
I roll her out of bed at night and just hold it up in the air for unknown reasons.
Yeah. Here's my man aggressively relaxing, a real comic book connoisseur. He keeps his finger on the pulse, and he's been looking forward to this. Thanks, man. He wasn't going to participate since you don't have the books. Whoa. But the Renaissance man of YouTube gifted me one just today. Hey, now.
Wow. Just in time.
Sounds like Genome to me.
Definitely Genome. He had an extra one, so, you know, that's Genome, man. He shares the wealth.
I'd ask Dave to send it, but it costs $80 to mail it down here.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I can send it for about $7, but it takes like, I don't know, 3 weeks.
That's faster than eBay, though. So
There you go.
Yeah.
and way faster than
Faster
CGC.
than my eBay. Yeah.
All right, gang. You know the drill. If you don't, we're gonna grade the cover. We're gonna grade the interior art, the writing / story, the concept, all on a scale of 1 to 5 in increments of 0.5s. Then we'll hit you with an overall grade. After each round, we're gonna prompt you, the chat, to share your grade so we can get that aggregate vote of the people. And that's how we operate this thing. But make sure you at least stick around until the halftime show after the second category, because that's when the choice for next show rather, is going to be revealed. And this is a very interactive show. Not only do you interact with your grades, you choose the next book. There's going to be 2 books to choose from, so you can be a part of that and make it happen.
You could be an announcer for a Calgary Stampede.
Good, yeah.
And you know what? If you guys don't mind, since I'm just going to use this momentum here to start first with the first category, which is going to be the cover. And I'm just going to roll right into it, guys. Ooh, look, everyone has it present. Bam. Well, here's the thing. Also, this is a somewhat unique edition of Grader'S Notes because this is a 2-book story. And, you know, since you're getting the whole enchilada in just 2 issues, we figured, you know, why don't we just cover both of them? So this is maybe one of the first times 2-issue Grader'S Notes episode. I'm going to give 2 grades for the covers, 2 separate grades, and the rest are going to grade the writing and, you know, all that other stuff on the whole. All right, man. I'm going to start with issue number 1. Issue number 1, Mobius, ladies and gentlemen. Mobius and Stan Lee team up. This cover is dynamite for me. Am I a mark for Galactus and Silver Surfer? Yes. But even still, I think Mobius does a fantastic rendition of Galactus. Cross-hatching galore with the Mobius style. I like all the little extra rendering. I think it's used a bit more tastefully than some 90s cross-hatch fiends. Jim Lee. But I think he pulls it off well. I think it's used well. I love the lighting on the inside of his hands. What a great detail. makes it seem like Surfer's emoting light, even though his body wouldn't really tell you that. But maybe a star is a light source. I don't know. Or maybe his eyes are. I don't know what the light source is, man. But you can tell there's light emitting in his hands. The trade dress is great. I think the yellow contrasts well with the color palette of the purple and the silver. This is an all-time cover for me. I can't mince words here. I think the scale, the choice to make Galactus so huge and massive on the real estate on the cover is a great choice, and the size difference of our hero is displayed well. It lets you know what he's in for, what a mounting challenge. So honestly, I gave it a 4.5, dude. I gave it a 4.5. Maybe he could have. The surfboard has this little thing on the bottom that makes it ebb down. That makes it look like he's kind of riding on a paper plane in that particular scene. But I don't know. There's not much else. I like the simplistic pose of everything. That cover's dynamite. 4.5. This is issue number 2. A little less going on, not as dynamic, you know. And what this cover did so well of filling out the real estate of the cover, this one does just the opposite. I feel like there's a lot of missed real estate on the cover. And also, considering Surfer is evading a blast, his body language doesn't really read like he's evading a massive blast. It almost looks like he's like lightly moving out of the way of, you know, a woman walking in his way on the sidewalk, just like whoop, when it should be like whoa, evasion body language. But he's kind of just chilling. But I do love the shrapnel blast. The beam itself is drawn very well. The foreground color change. There's a lot of good stuff going on with it. I still think it's a good cover, but it's a tough act to follow. I gave it a 3.5. So a 4.5, a 3.5. If I was to give it an average, I'd give it a 4. But I don't know if we're going down that route. And that's my grades, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you. And I'm going to kick it right over in the order that they were introduced. Mr. Miracle.
Mr. Miracle. All right, my double grades here, of course. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you say. I like Mobius' stuff. I've always liked Mobius' stuff. If you're my age, you were reading heavy metal, right? And you saw a lot of Mobius stuff in there. Heavy metal used to be really cheap to find. This is absolutely a nice copy of it, but yeah, right. That cover, that Mobius cover, and you know, actually, I'm going to show you something. I was lucky enough that I read this one shot, and there is a big, huge in the back here. There's a whole interview where Mobius is talking about writing this issue, right? And it goes on for pages and pages, and of course, being the comic geek I am, of course, I read all that, right? And he's talking about, like, this is the first time he did, like, a traditional Marvel comic and how he had to approach it, but, like, do what other artists had already done. Like, you have to have Galactus look like Galactus and the Surfer being the Surfer, but still be a Mobius. Like that Mobius had done it, right? So, and this is very Mobius. This is very, that's that whole thing. And then same with this, when you go onto this cover, and like I disagree when this one part of what you were saying there, Kenny. I like the pose that he's in. I like that it's like he's not really surfing, right? Like he's not like hanging 10 through the air and like having to cut waves. His board is just a vehicle, and the powered cosmic keeps him attached to it. It doesn't matter if, you know, he can go any direction as fast as he wants, and he is evading Galactus is pretty handily, right? Like that's a big Galactus blast coming behind him. He's just like, yeah, and like, yeah, you'll see that again in the interior. We'll talk about the interior, but so I quite like the pose that Mobius put on this cover as well. I think it's cool. I like the tone of the covers. I thought it was a good choice to have that sort of sepia brown to it, and yeah, like a little, you know, in there with that yellow, it really, pops. Of course, the Silver Surfer treatment is pretty classic, and we've seen that. It's basically the same as this. This one is the same as that one, right? Stanley, trying to get his mark on it, saying, this is a classic Stan Lee Silver Surfer story. So good. I like both those covers. Actually, for both of them, I gave the first one a 4. Right? Again, partly I agree with you. It should have had a little more focus on Silver Surfer because he is the protagonist of this whole story, right? The story doesn't revolve around Galactus. It revolves around the Silver Surfer, hence the title Silver Surfer, right? So then when you have the big Galactus, I understand that you have to have the big Galactus because Galactus is big, but it should have been, you almost would have wanted to switch 1 and 2's cover around, in my opinion, but it would have given too much away about what was happening in the second issue. Anyway, I really like that one. I especially like number 2. I really like the body pose and stuff on that guy. So cover number 1, I gave a 4. Cover number 2, I gave a 4.5.
Very nice. Very nice. Miracle. We're going to move it right along to Mr. Genome Presents. What's up, Remy Q? Welcome.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I might have to kill my green screen here. Let's see. Yeah, it's not gonna hurt the first one too bad. Okay, the covers. Yeah, I'm more accustomed to the Dark Horse Mobius style and all that, and previous heavy metal, but it's difficult, man. Like to translate. He does a good job going to the Marvel style. I mean, I like that, and I don't know. Maybe someone else can tell me more learned than me. I don't think this cover is inked. I think it's all hatched, and I think that's very impressive. But holy cross-hatch Batman, this is like the most cross-hatchiest of all hatchiest there's ever been. This puts the 90s to shame. But there's something else about that style, at least when Mobius handles it, is this Galactus face has depth. Like there's weight to his face there. I really dig it. Maybe it's a little too human looking, but whatever. I mean, that's just a minor nitpick. It is. There's something there. It's not just a flat plane. It looks really good. It's rendered well. His hands look great. I love the cupping motion. And actually, this is almost like a scene out of the second book, to be honest with you. But whatever. My one real big gripe with this cover is the Surfer himself. Looks very unfinished. I don't know what that's all about. Because in the second cover, he goes all out with the abdominals and the delineated thighs and all that. The well-pronounced crotchal region, but we don't see that here in this one. So it looks really hastily plugged in there. Like maybe he wasn't going to have him on there originally. I don't know, but whatever the case may be, not crazy about the Surfer on the first cover, but Galactus just looks absolutely incredible. Even if you're not a big fan of the crosshatch style that he's employing here, you got to admit, if nothing else, the pose is epic. The eyes look amazing. And I like the neutral facial expression he puts on him here too, because that's Galactus. He doesn't get angry usually, except for he fought the in-betweener over here. So he's just blasé and just hungry. That's it, right? He's not good or evil. So I like that. He didn't fall into the trope of making the bad guy have a sneer or a grimace or a look of anger. He looks very devoid of emotion, which is perfect. So this one, I'm going to give this a 4 as well. I'm typically not huge on excessive cross-hatching, but he does it tastefully enough here, and it's more like as a shading effect, because really, I don't think this is inked. If it is, it's very, very slight. So I'm going to give that one a 4, and I definitely think it's a superior of both covers, but there is a couple things to like. On cover 2, let me put that down for Ben's. So cover 2, the action pose. Yeah, wow, look at that. It's even 3D. My favorite, my favorite part of this cover is is like the devastation in the front. I love like these rocks they got. It's very Kirby-esque, how it's very 3D right there in the front. So I can dig on that. The Surfer looks better, but he still looks off to me. But at least he looks more finished in this one as opposed to the last one, maybe because he's the centerpiece of this time. I really do like the blast in the background. It's huge, right? It's not just some little ray beam back there. It's enormous. It's way bigger than him. It dwarfs him. And there's a pretty good sense of scale here in this. And I also like having Galactus hanging out there at the top saying, how do? And it's got old, ragged Silver Surfer in the other one, which is nice. And it's getting the more traditional color for the the trade dress up here. But this one's solid, if somewhat unremarkable. But the pose is interesting because you guys both put two sides of it. I still have that stupid letter that Lee wrote to Jim Shooter back in the 70s about not letting his artist put the hero's legs together because it looks like feminine and weak. And there's maybe a little bit of that there. And what Dave's saying is right. Like, he doesn't need to balance on this thing, and he's not resisting tidal forces, but maybe spread his legs out just a little bit, like a little more inactive, or more active in controlling the board rather than just with his mind, even though that's how he does it. I don't know. It's just a visual thing. I gave this one a 3. A lot less cross-hatching in this one too, by the way. It's in fact almost none to be seen except around the front part. So between the two, I'm going to go ahead and give the overall grade for both of these a 3. I'm going to meet it right, or no, 3.5, excuse me. So the first cover gets a 4, second one gets a 3, so right in the middle, 3.5.
All righty. Well done, Gino. And that issue 2 did actually look fantastic on your green screen. Like, it was only touching on the beam. That looks fantastic.
Like a particle beam.
Yeah, it was great. Mr. Roger, your thoughts? Any meat left on this bone? What do you think?
Man, you guys left nothing on the bone, man. you guys stripped this to the marrow. But yeah, I'm just going to repeat a lot of what you guys have said. Yeah, Gino, very little inking. I was thinking the same thing. Maybe a little bit on the surfer over here and on his tuning fork on this side over here, but that's about it. Everything looks this crosshatch city, and you know what? It works. It gives, like you said, a depth to him, and it gives a sort of a majesty to him as well. It just works for me. The fact that he is so large. I mean, sometimes we say, hey, you know, the artist, you know, they didn't take advantage of the space. This guy took advantage of the space because his head is off the top, and of course you only have him up to mid torso here. So it gives you an idea of the grand scale of what's going to be coming. And I think there's a little bit of allegorical going on here because the surfer looks somewhat puny, kind of skinny, kind of scrawny, and like you said, a bit unfinished. And that's the only part that I kind of deducted on this cover. The yellow here, I think, is kind of out of place. I wish it was something which was a little bit lighter, not so standoffish from the purple, but that's nitpicking. And you have the little, mystery or the little intrigue of what's going on over here. Although that's obviously the surfer. But so yeah, I'm with Kenny on this one, man. I think this blew me away, honestly. Those penetrating eyes with no irises. I mean, the stoic look. This is really good stuff, especially when you see this and when you buy this and you see what's happening inside. It doesn't contradict anything. It really goes in the same vein. 4.5. I'm with Kenny 100% on that one. This one, pretty good as well. It gives you the same sense of scale, right? And then we know that Galactus is behind this building, behind this energy bolt, and you see not only the bolt coming down, you see the reaction of the debris and the reflection of that coming back up. You have these, like Mr. Miracles was more sepia tone. This is more pastels here, a little lighter tones, which for Mobius, that's kind of his MO, I suppose. So I kind of like that. I do like the white here better because, again, we sort of have a relationship with, there's not some kind of weird element color like it was on that first cover. And you have, of course, Galactus up here, in the box. The surfer is pretty good. I think his face looks a little bit like kind of like a one of those dime store dummies. Not so crazy about that, but very powerful. Obviously a battle's going to be going on. That there's obviously conflict coming about from it. So I like that sense about it. And again, Kenny, you and I are on the same wavelength. I put it 3.5. Really good cover, but that first one I think is superior. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice assessment from Roger. I agree with him. And Dime Store Dummy is what my ex-girlfriend used to call me. We would have arguments. All right, the panel has laid down the gauntlet here. Chat, what say you? This is definitely one that you guys can participate, whether you've read the book or not. You can either give two separate grades if you like. You can give an average grade, but why don't you go ahead and share your thoughts there in the chat, and I'll even prompt it with a directive there in the chat. So go ahead and grade this cover.
Yep, fun stuff. See, Mobius kind of transcended to the Marvel style, and he didn't really take any liberties with the look of the characters either. Like you think, he might if he was given any carte blanche at all, which I imagine he was. But he kept pretty true to the character design of the original.
Well, you can't stray too far if you're doing things for Marvel Comics. I'm sure Stan Lee was like, "Look, can't make them too weird. These are my characters, right? And I want to do this with you."
Yeah,
so
what
I'm sure
a
he
team
didn't
up,
have carte blanche.
I think
of
you're right,
course,
but I think you still
do
had some
Mobius
condition
style.
of the surfing that was quite different.
But he
Yeah,
couldn't have
Miracle,
made
I
like
think-
Silver Surfer with gold wings and purple.
Yeah, there's not much you can. He doesn't have much of a costume to alter, Surfer. And I think you're the only one to grade issue 2 higher than number 1, right, Miracle? I don't think anyone else.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's such a classic Mobius cover, right? Like I was a huge fan of his. Have you ever seen the movie Heavy Metal?
Used to have it on VHS.
Yeah, right. So that
Good old John Candy.
that whole one with John Candy where he's like, he's a nerd that gets teleported. That's all Mobius. And then the whole first one where what's that? Dar.
Wasn't he Dar?
Oh, right.
Yeah, wasn't that the name of the character?
Like, yeah. But yeah, and then if you just read any of the old issues, like even when by the time this came out, Mobius had been doing comics for quite a while through the 70s, 60s, and 70s, and that's just such a classic cover, and I was such a big fan of his, so I like that cover. I like it better than
That's right.
Fair enough.
Dan.
It's definitely a great cover.
Yeah,
Cool cover.
I think Mobius did the last part, the lady on the flying dragon thing. I think that was Mobius.
Right.
Was that him too?
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Is he a
I think
French
so.
guy? Is that where is he a French guy, Mobius?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Jean Girard. Yes.
Draws pretty well for a frog. Yeah. What was that name? Hand over fist. I always remember that skit. That's like my favorite part.
Yeah.
Hand over fist.
You got what's coming.
He would never do anything immoral unless you're talking about the prostitution ring in the preschool.
He's full of nothing but the milk of human goodness and kindness, or whatever. That's a Shakespeare quote too, by the way. Okay, we got any more grades coming in? If not, I will start tabulating.
Yeah, I think you can
Tabulate your
start
stuff.
tabulating.
You know how me? I always gotta do it twice. 1, 2.
Between two brothers, Dustin, if you want to get your hat in the ring and grade this cover on a scale of 1 to 5. Now's your chance.
How do you know it's Dustin?
Currently, right now, it stands at a 4 for the chat. So for the overall.
The overall. Cool.
That's about right.
Pretty much
High
in line.
marks.
Yeah, pretty much in line. Yeah.
Even if it wasn't drawn as well as it was, it's just such an epic, especially of course that first one. It's just such an epic cover. The glow, the big eyes out there, just awesome.
Yeah.
The glow in the palms really does a lot for it. Like, what a great detail that is. Okay. I think we can drop the gavel on the cover. Everyone has said their piece. Fantastic. Let's see. Now,
Someone's looking for that nib pen back there. Where did I leave that thing?
yeah. Where's my purple markers? You trying to draw Galactus?
Oh, man.
Sorry, boys.
Oh, we got a 4 from Two Brothers.
You're too late, but it wouldn't change the score. So
Perfect.
I don't think
Yes,
so.
perfect. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, so you know what? I will kick it to Mr. Miracle, and you know what? I'll let you choose. Do you feel like you want to start this round on the writing or the art? I'll let you set the tone, Miracle.
I'm cool with either one. Let me do the writing.
Let's do the writing.
I already kind of expounded a little bit about how much of a fan I am of Mobius, but let's talk about Stan Lee. All right, because I don't know if you know, I'm not always the biggest Stan Lee fan out there. I know a lot of people like him. I'm not a fan of him for the reason that other people are a fan of him. I'm a fan of his because of what Stan Lee's greatest gift really was marketing, and he saved comic books. And I don't know if we'd even have or comic books or what kind of form comic books would be taking if it wasn't for Stan Lee. So I always thank the man wholeheartedly for that. His other gift was writing, and sometimes he was really, really good at it. Sometimes he got a little childish, right? I think a lot of times when Stan Lee started writing again for Marvel Comics, and he was coming back in the 80s, and he was doing all this stuff, and he was, a little bit here and there and whatnot writing, he would kind of fall back into what he originally intended comic books to be, which was for kids, right? For little kids. And he would kind of have that little bit of immature writing. But here, he knew full well this is going to be an adult story about the Silver Surfer. I'm working with a guy who's done, a ton of adult stuff. He's a, horror, sci-fi horror legend as an illustrator, right? And I think he really went at it with this story. It's very, very mature for the normal stuff that Stan Lee writes. It's like, man, like there's a lot of tones in this story that it's really dark, and it's saying something, right? Like Stan Lee is trying to say something a little, like maybe a little pointing his finger at how society is these days, or on the days that he was writing this, but still staying true with the Silver Surfer. And man, the dialogue in here, Stan, this is such, you can tell how much he loves the Silver Surfer and how much he loves writing Silver Surfer's dialogue, because some of the stuff he says in here, I'm just like, these are some of the best quotes you've ever had on Grader'S notes. Oh, the whole one where, when they're talking about, I'm trying to find it, where he's going to go off and fight Galactus. And here he is. If we turn from battle because there is little hope of victory, then where would valor be? Right? Like, I mean, like, that's totally the Silver Surfer thing to say. Like, and he's going off to fight Galactus, which he knows he can't possibly do. Right? He can't possibly win physically against Galactus. Man, some of this stuff is just cool. Yeah, man, I'm not gonna like totally go crazy. Maybe you guys get the idea. Yeah, this is like was one of those books I picked up, and it's not a continuity story. It's like there was no superheroes on Earth except for the Silver Surfer, and Galactus came here before and made this deal with Silver Surfer, because that seems to still play out as part of the whole thing with this thing, with the storyline. But just how like humanity goes through, we want to worship him, and then we don't want to worship him, and we're defying him. And man, you could just the stuff these guys say, hear me, my once and former herald, yield and you live. It's like, come on, that's like as if Galactus doesn't say stuff like that. Yeah, really cool story. And like I said, Stan Lee is obviously taking the idea that he can write a mature story and a mature book for adults and run with it, right? Like he's got things to say about society and about being heroes and what it, religious fanatics and all kinds of crazy stuff that's going on here. Even, commenting, on life on other planets and how human beings would react to all of this and everything like that. And it's just, really, if there's a Stanley story I like, and especially one that I like about the Silver Surfer, it's this one. It's always stuck out. Parable is what it's called, right? So, I gave the story. Let me see, what did I write down? 4, right? Especially because of that dialogue in there, man. Some of the stuff these guys say is just like off the hook. It's perfect. You can tell he loved writing the story. Pledge to challenge me no longer, right? Like, come on, man. Gotta love it. 4.5. 4 for that one.
Yeah, man. Very nice, very nice. Strong grade for Miracle. Well said. Genome, now that you are hydrated, let's hear what you think about the writing from Stan the Man.
Stan the Man, Mr. Lieber. Yeah, he definitely had some things to say here, and some of it was all right. Some of it I thought was a little hackneyed, but overall, I'd say it's pretty solid. And I'm like you. I don't remember who said it, but I'm wondering if this is like an Earth without heroes or superpowers kind of storyline, because was that you, Dave, that said that?
Yeah.
Because it seems like right at the beginning when Galactus is first arriving, they're freaking out because there's a spaceship coming into Earth orbit, or whatever. And it's like that's like a weekly occurrence, right, in regular 616. So they seem very surprised by this, and no one's ever heard of Galactus, and none of the Avengers or any other superheroes come to help when he's laying or just standing in the middle of the city, So yeah, if you take it in that vein, it's a much better story. And I guess it'd have been pretty easy to try to make it a huge battle royale when all of Earth's heroes go up against the mighty Galactus, like it typically does when he arrives. But for every step forward it takes, it seems to take a step back for me. I don't know what the deal with religion in this one is and why it was bashed so bad. He just made anyone who's religious look really bad in this. Like everybody just turns into a fanatic immediately. And that's just not how it works, man. It's small pockets of it. And, whatever your feelings on religion are, it's not that overbearingly bad that the whole world within the span of a day is going to turn into the hate monger. You know what I mean? So that was just a little off-putting, and I'm not sure why he did that. You can just make the evil of man, power-hungry, power-grubbing people will, try to fill the void, which the main baddie in this one kind of does. And he's shown to be a charlatan. So that's all right. But it's like, then the entire populace looks bad, right? Except for maybe the sister who doesn't go by and some little kid that comes in later. It's hard to explain until you've read it, but it's just weird. It's like this mass hysteria psychosis, and I don't think it would be that bad. I have a little higher estimation of humanity than that, but whatever the case may be, Galactus is not standing in our city limits. So all that being said, the dialogue is all right. It's a little wordy at times, and Silver Surfer does a lot of inner monologuing in this, even during battle. It's a little off-putting as well. I think the action speaks just fine. He's got Mobius drawing the stuff here. He can render the action pretty well. So that was a little weird. I found a couple typos in there, which is kind of surprising. I guess no one had the audacity to edit Stan the Man, right? So that was a little off-putting. And this probably falls more in the art, but I did not like the font that was used in that at all. It looks more like they're up in Asgard talking, that kind of swoopy font. I wasn't really crazy about that. It's a little off-putting. Made it some of it kind of hard to read, to be honest with you. But the story was all right. It smacked a little hard on the religious angle and making it look like it's a bad thing. Like people couldn't think for themselves if they were religious. And that was kind of off-putting. But it was a cool story. And I really what was great about this is because you got some dialogue and some time spent with Galactus, and you don't ever really get that. He's usually just some looming presence. He says something in one panel, and then it's a bunch of guys attacking him, or he's moving through a solar system eating something, So that was really cool. You got to see some of his machinations, right? Because he had a promise he made to Surfer a long time ago not to eat Earth, right? He's like, well, I'm not technically going to eat it this time. I'm going to make the humans destroy it first, then I'll just eat what's left, But it was kind of an interesting angle by him. But you see, many times throughout the book where Galactus maybe could have gotten surly, but he never really came off as angry, which is good. It kind of kept to the cosmic level of the character. And they even mention it several times in the book, in case you're not picking up on it, that he's beyond such kind of petty things. So that was really cool. It's really good to see some more inner thinking of Galactus, and to see he was still semi-noble creature, even though what he was doing was not so noble. Like, he bore no malice towards Silver Surfer, didn't kill him when he had the chance. So it was kind of cool. Surfer definitely seemed like Surfer. Surfer gets way too big a pass from the comics community, though, because he's probably the biggest mass killer in the history of the universe, just so he could save his old lady. But he just said all the Surfer things, and this is where the Dark Knight got its idea, right, for its ending right here, right? I think, did this come out first, or did Dark Knight come out first? I can't remember which, but this is what's that? Oh, sorry, Roger. I thought you said something. Yeah, same ending, man. Same exact ending. So that was kind of, I was a little chuckle for me, but it was very Silver Surferish, and I love the very end of it, man. It's just like, I'm just going to be alone. That's perfect. That's the Surfer, right? He's always alone. He can never be anywhere. He's like Hulk, but on a cosmic scale. So sorry, I rambled for a while there. It was an interesting, though somewhat flawed at times, story. And it was just nice that we didn't get drowned out with all the other superheroes on Earth, right? It was just the Surfer and the Galactus and then the people, which was cool. It gave you much more time to delve into their side of things. So all that being said, I'm going to go with an overall grade of a 3, just because he had some lofty ideals here, maybe a little bit of flawed execution, and maybe the writing was a little stiff and stilted at times, but a really cool concept, and I give it a 3. Very enjoyable reading both parts.
Nice.
Great analysis there, Gino. Per usual. And Mighty Metarog, let's hear your take on Stan Lee's story that he crafted here.
Sure. First of all, notice that this is an epic comic. Am I still there? Yes. Okay. This is an epic line comic because it's no comics code and no continuity in the regular Marvel universe. So that's the kind of analysis I have to go through. Why was this done in this way? And that's because Stan Lee here is doing something that he doesn't do in the normal continuity. He's actually, the title of this story is Parable, and that's exactly what it is. This is a parable by Stan Lee. And like Dave, Mr. Miracle, it's dark. He has a very low conception of humanity here. They are rudderless. They essentially will follow anybody who has any kind of leadership, regardless of the morality of that leadership. And to me, that's a bit disturbing, right? I mean, I think I thought the Stan Lee was a little more hopeful in that, but it is a story, so I'll give him a pass that way. But Galactus here is quite different, I think, than in the regular continuity. Normally he's very withdrawn and almost apologetic about having to do what he does. He's a force of nature. But here, apparently, at some time in the past, the Surfer had, like in the regular continuity, had denied him the eating of the earth, or the devouring of the earth, and his word or his vow was that he could not do it. So he's getting hair splitting here. He comes down and he says, well, everybody do whatever you want. There's no sin, there's no laws, no nothing. So I think he sounds to me like very petulant and very vindictive here, because he keeps saying, I'm hungry, and apparently he doesn't have the Surfer or any other herald. So he's gonna do whatever he can to have the earth destroy itself, and then pick up the scraps. And then the Surfer here is a very messianic kind of figure. He is, he's there on Earth for whatever reason. Maybe he foresaw this coming. We don't know, because there's no other heroes. And I wasn't sure why he was in that bum kind of, in that alley, as a bum. And that later on, it did come to me when you come to the end, and you see that when Galactus is no longer have the faith of the people, and then they sort of transpose their faith on Silver Surfer. And then there's a false prophet in here that's taking advantage of Galactus, even though he has no connection to him directly. And we have the girl that's the saint, the shining light, and the great darkness of humanity. There's a lot of depth here. I agree with Miracle. The dialogue here is really something special. Like that one you said about that. It kind of reminds me of something that Winston Churchill said during World War II, that it even if you're going to die, it is better to perish as a free man than to live as a slave, right? And I got that kind of vibe from it. And at the end, it's a good little twist, right? Where the surfer himself, they want him to be the god, and he's like, okay, so he becomes vengeful, and he becomes, the just the epitome of what they don't want, so that they'll hate him. And even though even though he is going to be alone, he is going to be ostracized. At least they won't destroy themselves. A lot of depth to the story. Again, what Genome said, I don't agree with a lot of his intimations here, but I can't deny that the story is really well done. Great dialogue. It's very thought-provoking, and and it was a quick and good read too. So I gave it a 4. I thought it was amongst Stan Lee's best writings that I've read.
Fantastic insight there, Roger. I'd expect nothing less. My man, Rod.
Thank you, buddy.
See? Let's see if Miracle was the culprit of my double voice. Oh, of course he was. Okay. Had a little echo going, Miracle. It's no biggie. And welcome to newcomers into the chat. It was Terry, Jerry the Jitterbug, Matt Woods in the house. Freaking, who else did I see? That was one person I missed. Funkadelic. Good to see you guys. Okay. Yeah, I gotta say this. It's a different Stan in this book than I'm used to seeing. You can tell it was, Epic Line teamed up with Mobius and maybe geared towards like an older audience, because you don't get a lot of the kind of hammy stuff that you get from a lot of Stan Marvel books, which I guess when I put myself in his shoes, if he's genuinely writing with like a 10 to 12-year-old in mind, I guess I have to forgive him on some things, but you don't get constant characters like announcing out loud their powers and what they're doing, and he hit me with a cosmic blast. Good thing that my energy deflects that, and da-da-da. Like, you don't get any of that crap. Everything, most of the dialogue is really serving a purpose and not just like announcing the obvious, which is nice. And I think Stan brought his A game. He definitely tried to get, I feel like Surfer is the character that he always tries to get like philosophical with. That's, his philosophical outlet is like Surfer and Galactus stories, it seems. And, does he sometimes try to get maybe a little too lofty than he's actually capable of? There may be some of that, but I still think he holds his own very well in the story. I do really enjoy the dialogue throughout. It's got that Shakespearean poetic vibe, but it's not overdone, which like sometimes happens in Thor books, where I'm like, I understand you want to make him speak in that noble verbiage, but sometimes it's a little much. But the way he has Galactus and Surfer speak is like, I think, the perfect tone of like that nobility, almost Shakespearean kind of talking, while still sounding like they're actually having a human conversation. As far as the themes of the book, I think it's easy at first glance to go through the story and think that it is like an indictment on religion, right? But I don't think so. I don't take it as that. I think more than anything, it's putting a spotlight on like false prophets, because when and I think it's like really specified here that like religion as a whole or whatever isn't necessarily bad, when he's like kind of scolding Galactus, like when he says, "Who are you to like let them think you were God? I thought you were like above deceit and everything." And he's like, "Is a God not power? Is a God not might? Shit, I'm the mightiest motherfucker around. So I think I fit the bill, dude." Is pretty much what he said. I'm paraphrasing that. And Surfer says, "Surely true divinity is love and grace and knowledge supreme. With all your power, you know not why." Okay, got a little Shakespearean there, but his point is, but he's saying, no, to be godlike is to have divinity and love and grace. So I think he's saying, no, true God is this, but you're being this. You're being something else. You know, you are not a representation of God. So I think he's more embellishing the false prophet side now, as Galactus's role. Now on the human side, I think it's even broader than religion too. It's just like I think humanity does have a tendency towards this. Is it as widespread as like it may seem in the book? Maybe not, but sometimes you have to do so for dramatic effect. But I think we all lived through the last couple of election cycles, right? And seems to me that people really tend to cling to these leader types, whoever's running for office, either side. It turns people into these freaking like devoted fans of this leader, and he's my guy, and if you're against this guy, you suck. And it makes people act out of character, and it totally changes people's behavior patterns based on who's running for office. Like, we have such a tendency for that stuff. And I think it is good to kind of point out it's a big flaw in humanity. In America, anyway, it's the only country I've lived in. But I think it's fair to like point out that people tend to do that. And religion probably is an example of that too, of, you know, losing yourself and the stuff you know to be true because you're subscribing to something. You know, I think that message applies more broadly than just religion, but it's being used here. So, you know, I think that the theme is very good. I think there's cool little details that give it that mature tone, like the other false prophet guy who's trying to like cash in, the evangelist guy. It was cool to see he got his humanity back when he saw that his sister died, and Galactus could have saved her, but he didn't, and that's what makes him snap out of it and say, wait, this dude ain't all he's cracked up to be. And to see the guy who was the biggest offender of this, like taking advantage, you know, brainwashing people and all that, snap out of it, like, wait a minute, he got his humanity back, which is cool. And then at the end is almost like a Twilight Zone thing of such a Twilight Zone ending. They went through this horrible experience of, don't follow these alien false prophets. They are not your God, dude. That's a bad idea. Surfer saves the day, and he's at like the UN giving a speech, and sure enough, everyone in true Twilight Zone fashion is like, thank you for getting rid of that false god. 3 cheers for our new god, Surfer. Bow down, bow down. And he's just like, what? So that was a little, I guess that was a little bleak at the end of like, you didn't learn your lesson. But you know what? If we're being honest, talk to me during whatever the next election cycle is and tell me if we learned our lesson, because we don't in that regard. Is it the whole world? Maybe not, but goddamn, I think it is something that is worth pointing out in a story. So hats off to Stan. I love the story, one of his best works. And man, I want to give it a 4.5. I was thinking 4, but yeah, I like the overall theme, and I like the panel-to-panel execution of dialogue. 4.5, baby. Boom.
Nice.
Thank you. Chat. Chat, the action is on you. We've said our piece on the writing in the story. If you've read it before, sounds like some in the chat have. I'm going to prompt you in here right now to grade the story 1 through 5. I'm just going to catch up on the
one thing that I took off for is that I get what Stan is saying, but I think he hammered it a little bit hard. You know, I think it was a little bit too far out there. Like I said, too Twilight Zone, right? I mean, you can do it subtly and get the point across, like he did with the death of the girl and the conversion of the false prophet. That was more subtle, but you know, hammering it constantly, everything, you know, where the government had no power, it was all in the false prophet. It just kept going over and over and over. I think that was a little bit heavy-handed. A little bit more subtlety, I think, would have been a better story and a more believable story.
Good point.
Fair point.
I don't feel like this story was anti-religious. I thought it was more like that whole golden calf at the bottom of Mount Sinai or whatever, when, you know, like, don't worship false idols, and that there's these cult leaders and, you know, false prophets that are out there that are lying to people just to get power, right? Like, I don't think he meant all religions. I was just thinking he was kind of like, you know, these guys are dangerous, and they could, you know, if something like this happened and they grabbed hold of it just because of humanity's the way we are, they could use that to great disadvantage to humanity, right? And do things that are evil.
I think it's for dramatic effect, you know, how hard he hits the point home. I think the more you add nuance, sometimes the more you lose the drama, you know. So I think it was more around.
He's not that practiced at writing adult stories either, right? So maybe he thought he needed
right.
to.
Yeah, I gotta look at the year, but this is I think around the time of the Jim Baker scandal too. So I'm sure that was weighing heavily into his writing here.
Forgot about that, dude. There's a whole bunch of those. You know,
yeah, I mean, it was more about fanaticism, right? That the fanatics that don't listen to reason, don't see, you know, what is right in front of them. I mean, this is a Galactus that came down and it just proclaimed this with no background, with no history, with no foundation, and they believed.
I was so busy gushing, I forgot my big critique of the story. So let me just squeeze it in now. My big critique of the story is, what a lousy plan of Galactus. Of like, you're starving, you want to destroy the planet. That's a long con, brother. You're gonna go and say,
just go to Venus. Just right next door.
Wild. It's like, you know how long it's gonna take until they literally destroy the planet? Like, not a good plan for Galactus.
Right. I mean, I would have thought a better plan was like, hey, Silver Surfer's here now. Okay, listen, I'll leave and I'll set things straight. Find me another planet, and you know, let's go back to the beginning, you know, and maybe the Surfer can say, you know, heck with you or whatever. But that never occurred to Galactus. He was just like, nah, I'll wait till they, you know, I'll wait till the whole Earth is ash, and then I'll eat. That could be.
He likes the steak well done. That's all.
Yeah. You would think if his angle was to self-destruction is how he was going to get it, you think he would show up and like instigate a world war or something, like, you know, start going through the nation's powers and be like, you need to bomb this guy. Instead, he's like, have a party. He's like, there's no sin, have a good time. It's like everyone's going to be chilling for a while. And like,
his vow was he wasn't going to do harm, right? Like he wasn't going to do physical harm.
Then no chicken dinner for you, Galactus.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's in the guise of oh, I'm setting them free, you know. But when everybody is a hedonist, that means that everybody is against each other because it's all for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was his plan. But there were still a few bright lights that just wouldn't go along with it.
I was mostly just happy to actually see Galactus talk some and put forth some ideas rather than just make him the big menacing bad guy, you know. And now I like the fact that he's kind of aloof, you know, in a lot of the other comics, and in this one too, he's really aloof. He comes down, doesn't say a word, just says, "Don't worry about sin, just do what you want. I'm going to stand here." So that was kind of cool. So it was just cool to see him dialogue with Silver some, you know.
Yeah,
true.
I think that's all the grades, unless we have anyone else coming in. And it's about time to announce our next book, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you announce that chat grade, and we'll give the stage to Roger as he prompts the chat for another decision. Which book will we do next?
Chat comes in with a 3.81, so that's going to be a 4 from the chat.
That's a 4. All right.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
All right,
Hey, we're
Roger,
doing
let the
good. We're
people
doing good
know.
this time. We're doing pretty good
Yeah.
this time, guys. We're in there. You know, we're in there. All right. So 2 weeks on my channel, and I've got two choices, right? So the chat is the final arbiter of what we'll choose here. So I'll start with Marvel and DC presents X-Men and Teen Titans, written by Chris Claremont, art by the very unusual team of Walt Simonson and Terry Austin. Covered by Simonson and Austin, and this, my friends out there, is a wraparound cover.
Whoa.
Dark Side
Side
and
is
Dark Phoenix.
sweet.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two is another pretty unusual combination. The last story, pre-crisis Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, written by Alan Moore. Okay,
Whoa.
believe it or not. And illustrated by Kurt Swan. So talk about two different generations of
Dang.
creators, right? George Perez does some of the inks as well. It's also a 2-issue story arc. It's completed here in Action Comics 583. Yes. Murphy Anderson and Kurt Swan covers on both. So choose. You can put Superman or X-Men or something like that, and the majority takes it.
Dang, that's
Did Alan Moore sell the rights to that Superman book, and then does he hate Superman now?
I don't think so. I'm sure he tried.
That's the Greg Land Dark Phoenix pose right there.
I think that came after this, no.
Well, I think it's one of the ones that put him on
This
the
is
map.
from
It's one you see about all the
19
time.
This is from 19. What is this from?
I've read the X-Men in Titans, but I've never read that Superman. That one's kind of interesting.
1982.
Hmm.
And this is from 1986. So we got two 80s contenders.
Wow.
Here.
This is a hotly contested vote here tonight.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, Roger put him in a pickle. He put some 2 nice picks on him.
Well, I try to pick, something that will elicit different responses from all of us, shall we say. Okay. But I don't think we can go wrong with either. I think they each have their merits and detractions.
I think we're at.
And they both have reprints. They've both been reprinted. I looked on eBay, and the reprints were less than $10 shipped. So
Nice. Like
I did my research.
5-3 in favor of the X-Men right now.
Okay.
People with such marks for Claremont. Me, I'm going for Simonson. I didn't realize Terry Austin worked on that book too.
Huh? And what's another thing that's unusual about this, guys, is that this was the book that J Hood Creative did in our contest. If you remember that.
Good call.
I didn't remember that until after I had sent the message to you guys, because I did a stream with him on Tuesday, and then I started looking up things, and yep, that was it. You can take me off, Kenny. I'm getting nervous working by myself.
Thank you. He's under the spotlight. Him in his throne room there.
Yeah. Remember, I was no faces for a couple of years, and there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah, I think we got you, Lasso. Included. I think you're one of the 5 that I said. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Another X-Men.
So is
You
it
never really have enough X-Men.
X-Men and Teen Titans?
That was from 82, you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
That's older than I thought it would be.
It's,
I love Marvel,
yeah,
man.
yeah. This was $2 back then. It's like a double size though. It's
It better be.
Nothing
Well,
in
it's
there.
a-
There's no
yeah,
ads
a
in
lot.
there. There's no ads in it as well, so that's probably bumped the price up a lot.
No ads. No ads. Yeah. It's going to be a read. Yeah.
They can make their money on the front end then.
Have a good night, Simeon. Thanks for
Night,
stopping
Wayne.
by.
Good night, buddy.
Okay. Boom. X-Men it is. X-Men Teen Titans. Fantastic. And yeah, I think I'm going to read that Superman anyway, just like Jackson said. And let's keep it on moving to the next. Now we're going to dig into that interior art. You know, Mobius is kind of almost the star attraction of this book. That's kind of one of the things that makes this series so unique, and you know what's kind of makes it a known 1-2 punch. Mobius hits the scene on Marvel and does Silver Surfer and Galactus. Does it hold up to the hype and the lore that comes along with it? Well, Roger's going to tell us his thoughts as he chimes in first on the art.
Okay. I thought Gino was going first, but okay, great.
Oh, did I blow that?
Um,
Hold on. Cover, story, art. That's right. You know what, Gino? Pardon me.
Okay. Either way.
Let me
Sorry, Roger.
share the screen with you.
Screen share. Okay.
Wait 1 second.
You see, Kenny, when you move out of order, you know, things get
Yeah,
discombobulated.
he wasn't even ready. Shit.
There we go. Yeah, I wasn't. So if you don't want to be seen, turn your cameras off right now because I'm just going to share the screen. But all right, there we go. So yeah, if you didn't notice this Mobius when you first bought from the cover, there you go. There's Mobius and his phallic symbols everywhere. Man, this book is kind of a it's a measure of degrees. And some things are absolutely amazing, and some things I don't like. Let's start with that things I don't like, which is where I usually start. I'm not big on his renditions of the people at large. I'm really not. I don't like the false prophet looking guy. Just everyone has that super like Saturday morning cartoon kind of look to him, but much more finished and obviously skillfully drawn. Don't get me wrong. This guy looks like Harry Truman for whatever reason, or crossed with FDR. It's strange, but it's just, I don't know. And I got to say, and I don't know if this is probably a good thing. This might be the lightest ink book I've ever seen in my life, man. There's barely any shadows. If there is, it's just like a color hue change. It's very little big blacks in here. I mean, you got a little bit of the surfer board here, but it's interesting. It's an interesting look, man. When you start doing these like every 2 weeks, like we do, you start noticing things a lot more. And I noticed a lot more in this book. But not to say it's devoid of it. Now, there's a couple of really cool panels. I love this spaceship entry panel here. It's just amazing. Great sense of scale, because like the faraway shots you see of the ship it belies the size of it. They're like, oh, look at the size of it, but it looks like that big. You know, it does not look big. Now you get an appreciation of the size of this thing with some buildings for scale down here. Great shot here with the helicopter. Some of his vehicles look so good, and I'm not accusing him of anything. They almost look like tracings. Like they are so perfect in some ways that I wonder. But man, there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. I like his angles. I like some of the imagery. And sometimes though, the epic pictures like this just don't look finished enough to bring out their true grandiose nature, you know. Great little shot there of Galactus beaming in. I like the awestruck crowd there. They actually look pretty good right there. But then he'll do some strange stuff here, looking like Galactus is like made of concrete, and it's just weird, and it kind of comes and goes. But I don't like the people here too much at all. This guy looks like an Oompa Loompa. He always did, but maybe they're teasing the spray on tan of a lot of these guys. You know, I don't know, but it's just weird. I do love the treatment. You know, he looks completely ridiculous. The surfer treatment, and when he's in his hobo mode, he's way too wide. Looks like the Hulk. I thought the Hulk was narrating at first, to be honest with you. And he was going incognito. But, you know, I'm not going to go over everything. I'm not a big fan of the treatment of the people in this. I don't think it works too well in this comic, especially when Galactus and Silver look so much different and more, I don't know, more realized like they normally would. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I just don't care for some of this art style that much. But the things that are amazing, let me tell you, it's kind of funny. My two favorite panels in this, or pages in the entire book, are the first page and the last page. This is a city, dude. That is a city. Every angle is absolutely perfect on this very first splash page. I mean, it's the worst part about it is these little characters. They look kind of like the old Art Deco kind of style you see in a poster, that type. But I just love the angles of the city. It looks perfectly laid out. There's a great sense of scale. Angles are good. And then the very last one. Talk about conveying like an emotion here for the Silver Surfer. Is like, here he is, man. I've been thrown out of another home. And now he's just kind of looking down, dejected. And there's the earth and the sun's kind of coming around the horizon. Epic stuff. So there's a lot of really cool things to be had in here. And some things I just don't care for that much. Surfer looks good. I like the way Surfer is drawn in this book too. But overall, I'm going to give it a solid score. I'm going to go with a 3 just because once again, it bounces around. Technically, I think the awesome moments outweigh the lesser moments. Like I like this Nornrad side kind of profile right here. Looks pretty good. So they definitely outweigh some of the less perfect, shall I say, aspects of the book. So, but I don't want to give it 3.5 because there's just nothing here that really turned me off. Like when like the vast majority of your book is the human characters, and I didn't like the way they're laid out too well. That kind of takes away from it. So, really love the treatment of Galactus and especially Silver Surfer inside the book. And those opening and final pages are absolutely incredible. And I like his cityscapes. Really good. Kind of minimalist backgrounds too. I forgot to mention that, but what you do see looks pretty good. I like the use of the colors pretty well. So yeah, gave it a 3. Really solid work. And considering he probably never even drawn these characters before, or maybe he just diddled with them a little bit, like to warm up for this. He does a really good job with the source material characters. So give it a 3.
Okay. A 3 from Gino. Okay. Now, Mr. Roger, if you could let us know what you think.
Right now. Right. Well, I agree with Gino on this. In this case, that splash page, the detail there is amazing. It really is. I mean, when you look at every little light is spaced, so that it's believable, and then you have these two characters kind of silhouetted here, from the rest of the sky here. Really good stuff. Let me start with some of the negatives first, right? I mean, I don't know if it's my comic, and I don't know if I should put this in the art, but I had a hard time reading the lettering in this comic. It's thin, and they're very close together sometimes, and so sometimes I had to really like get down there and like, why did he like not space them out a little bit, make them a little thicker? It was just difficult to read. I know I'm getting older, my eyes are not what they used to, but it was difficult to read. I mean, sometimes I had to like double take these word balloons, and I think Mobius did do the lettering here. Yeah, like Genome said, there's phallic symbols everywhere, but I guess when you're an artist that does heavy metal and those European kind of magazines, I guess you can't help it. You got too many. You got surfboards, you have rocket ships, you have buildings. I mean, they're everywhere. It's ubiquitous throughout the book. Some of it, Genome hit it on the head. Some of the inking here is so light. It's almost like the actual color strike was like muted, And I get why he would do it every here and there, but it's like through most of this comic, except for the scenes like this, it's like very, very pastel-y and very shimmery. I guess in a science fiction world, maybe that's why he's trying to elicit that and make it sort of so that, this is not the real world. This is the epic line world. It seems to be like this is some kind of maybe near future, and there's some technology they talk about that we don't really have. But yeah, the Genome hit it on the head. Man, his rendition of Galactus is just, man, it's among the best I've ever seen. And I hope Biggie's not here because Kirby did a great Galactus as well. The hobo Silver Surfer, that fooled nobody, right? But again, why was he doing this? Why was he put in that position? Did he feel he had to go there? I think he rendered him well, because if he looked like the Silver Surfer just with a shirt on, well, it would have been obvious. So he had to sort of hide his shape, and the surfboard, I don't know, that was hard to hide. But so many good panels here. That stone face Galactus. I like the cement face Galactus. It sort of gave me the impression that he is just that, he's just a emotionalist, and just he didn't care about any person dying, like the lady. He purposefully attacked the Silver Surfer when he was trying to save her. He in this comic, he's just a different type of Galactus. He's a lot more, like I said, he has more dialogue. He's more aggressive. He's more of he's just more of a, kind of like a scorned wife, kind of, very, very, very weird in the way that he acts. But look at this, that bolt coming down there from Galactus. That's good stuff. That'll work even in a continuity comic. This one here with his back turned, the scale, his command of scale is just amazing. Look at the footfall there in the foreground. Really, really good stuff. Let me tell you, if this was done the Marvel way, and then he got a plot, and then he had to fill in the art, his storytelling techniques are really good. His panel layouts are, like this one here, where you want to see him, where he's looking back with that helicopter. It's all in one panel. And if he would have cropped that, it wouldn't have had the effect that it did. Really, really good stuff. Yeah, this guy, I think he made him a different shade to sort of make him stand out, because the people are kind of oddly rendered, but I think that's just Gene Gerard's style. But honestly, I really did enjoy his storytelling here. His layouts were on point. I gave him deductions for that weird kind of lack of coloring here and there, lack of, I don't know what it is, inking something. And others had it, some of them didn't. Maybe it was my copy, I don't know. But to me, it detracted a little bit from the art. But I think that's nitpicking. I think, to me, this is a 4 all the way. Really well, and I was surprised that I liked it this much, because I generally am a traditionalist when it comes to the art. But considering it's epic, considering this was sort of a different world, I sort of gave it a little bit of more leeway, and I enjoyed the art quite a bit. 4.
All right. 4 from Roger. Very nice, very nice. I will take the baton here, and I'll tell you, on the legibility of the dialogue, it's funny. I think it's a printing thing, because I had a similar problem on the first issue, and like really the first half of the first issue. Like it would be kind of a little too light at times, and it just didn't read very well. Versus my second issue, I felt like all the font was like a bit darker and more defined. So I think there was a difference there in the printing press or something. But for some of the book, I had that same issue. I would have preferred a more standard lettering. Get artistic with the panel art. You don't have to get artistic with the with the fonts. But so I'm kind of with you on that. For me, I think Mobius is like a master of legibility. Like, no matter what page I'm on and what's happening in said page, I think there's something about Mobius's work that everything just reads very clearly to me. He has very deliberate line work. I feel like he's a guy that no line goes to waste. That crowd is amazing. Everyone in the crowd has a distinct face and characteristic. the design of this guy was weird. He is alien-esque, like heavy brow, seemingly no eyebrows. That's what makes him look the weirdest, I think, the lack of eyebrows. An interesting decision, like, but I guess it's to, make him be like a standout character in the book. He's definitely one of those guys that is like real fine with the line work. I don't know what size, pen gauge or whatever he's writing or drawing with, rather, but man, it's a fine tip pen. Kind of reminds me of like Frank Quitely in that way. He has like the real fine line work. There's not a lot of like bold, heavy lines. And even though maybe here and there I feel like it can be a little too fine, I think some of that stuff gets muddied in the printing process. And I bet you if you saw the original pages, it would read just fine. But he definitely has a very fine touch. Let's talk about his surfer in Galactus. He really has a stellar surfer. He has some of my favorite of like texturing of the surfer. Different artists have different ways of showing like the shininess of surfer. How do you illustrate this completely silver shiny being? And Mobius's trick is he does like these little globs of white glare on him, and I think that reads really well. A lot of other artists didn't do that. Like his faces, when he can get up close and really spend some time and take up a lot of real estate on a page, his faces are like second to none. Those two are great examples. The surfer and the Galactus, really stellar stuff. I like all the grit and the cracks and stuff. Gino mentioned like almost a concrete type of texture to Galactus' skin. I think there's something to that. Like, I just picture him more so than concrete. I picture him like out in cold space. When you get chapped lips, when it's like really dry and cold, I figure like Galactus is just this chapped ass dude. And different surfer artists, I think it was Gore that had mentioned like the Mount Rushmore, Buscema, Kirby, Mobius, and he threw in Byrne too. And while Buscema is my favorite surfer artist, each of the guys have different strengths. And I've always said Buscema's strong suit is showing bodies in motion. He's really good at that, and he always drew surfer like in motion on that board better than anyone. And I always love to see how he would draw surfer in flight, right? Kirby, for me, always had the coolest surfer facial expressions. I love his Kirby face. And that part is fantastic. What I think Mobius's strong suit is that he applies to surfer better than others is he gives surfer like there's a certain grace to, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I guess grace is the word. Or I feel like there's another word that describes that better. But yeah, there's something to like the ease of his movements, like here he's always moving like in a real I feel like there's another synonym that I'm looking for. Maybe it'll come to me. But yeah, I like the way in which he shows kind of surfer on the board moving around. And yeah, I mean, it's just a great look at this page of Galactus stomping through the city with like the camera behind him, like watching from afar. That's a great angle. Nice blast.
You maybe mean elegance?
Yeah. Yes, elegance.
Economy of movement, minimalist. I don't know.
Yeah. No, elegance is great. Yes, there's like an elegance to his movement that is awesome. Thanks, Roger.
Sure.
That bottom panel, it so reminds me of that Fantastic Four issue when Galactus gets that beat down by by a bunch of Marvel heroes. I think it's when they like cannonball the Thing at him, or maybe it's when Cap throws his shield. But there's a panel that's just like that, where they're smacking Galactus in the head. Anyway, it just gave me a flashback of that. And I guess the last thing I'll touch on is the color palette, because that's definitely a unique thing with this book. There's no primary colors to be found. You're absent are your bold red, blues, and greens, and in its place you have like these turquoise, yellow colors. There's that very distinct magenta purple that he uses for Galactus, and it's an interesting color palette, and I think it's good. I think it works. I think it's a nice trick that comics can use to like define themselves. Watchmen's a great example of that, of like this really unique color palette that's used throughout the book that avoids the primary colors. He does it here, a lot of pinks, a lot of pink skies like that. I dig it. I feel like that's a distinct Mobius thing, you know, and I love it. The only thing I can say on the negative side is sometimes I do think there's like some panels that seem to be a little like unfinished. There's a couple panels where Galactus, he didn't even draw like the form of the mask or helmet on Galactus, and it's just like a blank face, and the colorist had to kind of compensate for that. So, you know, sometimes when he gets small, he can, like this one was what I was thinking. Like he kind of
He
leaned
was
on
the colorist, by the way, Kenny.
He colored himself, yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, he relied on like the coloring process then
Yeah.
for some of that. So a missed opportunity. If he really rendered that a little more, that could have been a stellar panel. Instead, it's an okay panel, you know. But it's tough to complain after an Arrivals page like that ship landing and him coming through the tractor beam. Oh baby, that's primo. That's the reason I give this thing 4.5, brother. 4.5. Fantastic.
Woo.
Graceful elegance. Thank you, Gore. Okay. Next up, someone whose opinion we're gonna weigh pretty heavy, because clearly he's pretty good at drawing Galactus himself, as you can see in the background of his image.
Yes. I wish I was as good as Mobius at drawing, that's for sure. If everybody's been watching the show, you know I love those splash pages, right? And this book has a bunch, and there's some epic ones, right? David mentioned that cityscape there, unbelievable. But this whole book is full of them. Look at that! We're just chasing down that whole page. Love it. Love that whole scene, and I love the way he just like he's got Surfer just like casually dodging like that panel there. He's just basically going like you know, getting dodging Galactus's blast going on. All this Galactus stuff is just, man, splash pages galore. It's very, very true to Mobius' style that he's minimal with the inks, but he's got like, let's look at some of these character scenes. Like he never skimps on stuff. Like we're gonna find a bunch of people here when he's like talking to the crowd. Like, look how many people he puts in every panel, right? And they say, "Hey, draw a crowd." It's not one or two people. It's always like 20. A whole bunch of people in the background. Look at all the people in there, right? Like just face after face after face. Awesome splash page at the end. Almost getting that, Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk song going. Dun, 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 dun. That's so sad. If I was lucky that I read all of Mobius's little notes and story back here. that cool. Galactus. That's one you don't get in the book. That's just one of his sketches to kind of warm up on it. But yeah, he did this the Marvel Comics way. He specifically mentioned that was the first time he had ever worked that way, and that he really enjoyed it. He thought that was the way that he wanted to do comics from now on, just working with Stan Lee. It was the first time he was introduced to that way. You get some great stuff in this book at the back too, like some of that. That's a Mobius Iron Man. Cool. Anyway, I won't go too far into the back stuff, but yeah, and the writing, all of this is hand written by Mobius. And like I know you said, yeah, it's hard to read sometimes, but he said it was important to the story that, you know, he just wrote it and he didn't edit it out, and they didn't go in and type everything in a font, and because he tried to write that it affected the story, and he's like, yeah, sometimes it's hard to read and whatever, but I don't care. I thought it was important for me to handwrite all of this stuff on my art, right? So he doesn't understand how other artists can let other people do that, right? More splash pages, like page after page, splash page, big splash pages, full of buildings, full of crazy stuff going on. Great with emotional faces, right? Like Mobius is such a practiced and long-term artist by this point. Like everything he does, he knows what he's doing, and just and the sepia tones and all of like the pastelish kind of colors. He works with watercolor a lot, right? So that's where you get that kind of work. And yeah, it's so Mobius. This book is so Mobius. You could have taken the story and put it in Heavy Metal magazine, right? You could have. I mean, I know they're different companies, but it wouldn't have been out of place in that whole thing. Great visual storytelling, like even just little things like, you know, finally the surfer takes off his costume of being a hobo, right? And there's a whole splash page about that, just him like taking off his stuff and getting ready to go fight, right? Tons of stuff throughout this whole book. Love it. Absolutely loved it. I gave it a 4.5. I agreed with Kenny. I thought it was, you know, unbelievably amazing. I never want to hack on any of the other guys that have done it. Like, you know, Seema, Kirby, I've got their stuff right behind me here. They're the masters too. But I mean, Mobius is like, yeah, man, I never did a comic like this, but you know, I can hold my own. And he does. He stands up with any one of those guys in his renderings of the Surfer and Galactus. And the emotion that the characters showed, the body poses of, like, I like that, you know, Surfer wasn't like trying his hardest to get away. Like the Surfer is super fast. He's just like, whoa, dodge. No, and the whole time talking to Galactus is cool. Yeah, great. 4.5 for me.
4.5. All right. High marks on the art. Kind of across the board here. And that was when I prompted the chat to grade this art.
The chat.
Bam. And you know, an unsung, one of my favorite Silver Surfer covers actually doesn't come from any of the Mount Rushmore Surfer artists we spoke about. Shout out to Marie Severn. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Nice. Yeah.
Not a beauty.
Yeah, very nice. A much beefier Silver Surfer.
Got himself a Kirby squiggle too on the forehead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Good point. Good catch.
Gord's got some because I had mentioned that really aside from this, and I think I've read some heavy metal stuff, I haven't really read much Mobius. I've seen stuff online like images, but so Gore coming through with just some recommendations. The Inkle and his Great Western Blueberry are fantastic. Blueberry's out of print and extremely expensive. That's all right. I'm not above going digital, brother.
Yeah, Blueberry. Yeah, Blueberry is really good too. That's true. I haven't read that in a while, but that's good stuff. Yeah.
I'll be your Blueberry.
People always get that quote wrong too. Huckleberry. It's Huckleberry. Not Huckleberry. That means he's going to carry the guy's coffin. That's what it means, supposedly. So it was slang for the time. But I got your reference. I'll pick it up as you're laying down there, Kenny.
You know, you pick it up. It was, it was a little stretch at humor, but right.
I'll be your blueberry.
Oh, look who snuck. When did this rascal sneak in here? Bill, Comic Mag Musings.
A while ago.
Oh.
He admitted being late to the party.
Yeah, he came in. He came in a while back.
Then derided all of our grades.
He's a stealthy one. That guy is.
Oh yeah.
He'll hang out in the background and then kind of like a puma, hide in the brush and then pounce.
Mm-hmm.
Like a puma. Wow.
Puma.
A hungry puma. The Puma disc system. There's some shoes from the past. All right. Got any more grades coming in, people?
Pay him no mind.
Yeah.
Jackson really kirking him, I tell you. Talk about yin and yang. Wow.
Yeah. Wow, couple 5.
And we'd have it no other way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, look at Coyote.
All right. Speak now, forever hold your peace. I'm going to tabulate.
Okay. Tabulator out.
Comes into a 4.5.
Nice.
All right. I finally synced up with someone. Oh my
No, you're doing good. You're doing good today, Kenny. I think you're doing very good.
4.5.
I haven't been on the
Both did
button like you
4.5.
have this evening. Okay. Concept. Let's hit through the concept of this book, and I think now we do start with Mr. Roger. And
Yeah, you can just leave me
real.
here. You don't need to. You don't need to make me big or anything.
Okay. Yeah, we'll kind of
I just got a
shoot
few
through concept
comments.
and overall.
Yeah, just shoot me. Well, okay. So I look at it this way, right? You have an epic line comic, right? And it uses Galactus and Silver Surfer are the foils for Stan Lee's parable here. That's the way I look at this. And then you have Mobius, who gives everything kind of a science fiction-y fantasy slant, more than the current at that time Marvel artists of the time, that were in the in the Marvel camp. So, I give that a lot of credit because you're using you're using a publication that you have in your it wasn't Stan Lee's at this point, I guess, but he was still part of the whole corporation. No, they weren't incorporated yet, but he was still part of the whole business at Marvel, even if it was in the fringe. And he had something to say. He had something that he wanted to portray in a comic book, and he used the Galactus as the figurehead, the godhead, and he used Silver Surfer as the more messianic, the more the one who's the savior aspect here, to relate this story. And it was done. I don't think this was a cash grab or anything like that. It's $1 back in the late 80s. I think comics at this point were 75 cents or something. I don't think that was the case. I think this is something that Stan Lee wanted to do, that he, in some sense, in his mind or in the background, it's a story he wanted to tell. Maybe it was a cautionary tale here. Maybe it's not something he wholeheartedly believes, but it is it does have a bleak outcome of what humanity is here. That they're very, very easily manipulated, that a lot of them are fanatical, and that they will, wherever the wind blows, they will go that way, right? And they're always looking for some patriarchal figure to lead them. Otherwise, they don't have, most of them do not have a lot of character and will of their own. Again, it may be a cautionary tale, so I don't want to give that too much credence. But man, it's so, the dialogue here is so on point. Like you said, Kenny, I think that Shakespearean is sort of correct. You know, it's very soliloquy like in that sense. But that sort of fits here because, you know, in that grand scheme of something that has this kind of moral, this kind of parable in the story, it kind of fits here. I don't like the fact that he hit us on the head so hard with those, you know, ideals. That I think a little bit more subtle. I mean, I think I got the gist of it with the first issue, and then we get a whole thing with the Silver Surfer and them projecting godhood upon him. It just got a little bit too much for me. So that part I'm not crazy about, but I applaud that they had a vehicle for a story that could never be written in the regular Marvel continuity, and that they had an artist which was way out of the box for Marvel. So I give points for that. But I don't think the actual, I think the story was, again, out there, but I don't think that there was anything super, super huge about the concept of publishing it per se. You know, it wasn't like some kind of, I know this won awards in the whole bit, but I don't think the concept was so highbrow or so up there that I'm going to give it, you know, a 4. But definitely it's something that Stan Lee was able to get out there through the publisher. And with this particular artist, which is way out of the box for Marvel, high points for that. I give it a 3.5. I think it was definitely much higher concept than a regular issue. But again, I think it was a little too preachy and a little bit too obvious what he was trying to portray here. And that kind of turned me off a little bit on the concept.
All right. Good concept analysis from Mr. Roger. I would say in the concept department, just the initial team up of Mobius and Stan Lee is pretty cool and earns points in the concept to bring Mobius kind of like an indie darling to, you know, the big boy, the big mainstream company. And not only that, to have Stan Lee himself write the story along with Mobius is a cool mashup. It's almost like in like pro wrestling, you know, it's almost like having like the avant-garde indie wrestler CM Punk comes in to have a match with like Hulk Hogan, you know, and it's a way of, there's a lot of things that get accomplished in doing that. One is it will give the old guard, the Hulk Hogan in the, you know, the Marvel Stan Lee in this equation, a little bit of cool points rub from the hip scene who may think, oh, you know, I don't read those Marvel comics are for kids. I like heavy metal stuff, and I like this independent, more adult themed stuff. Kind of gives them some cool points for doing that. It also offers, the mainstream stamp of acknowledgement and legitimacy to a guy like Mobius, even though, I mean, I don't think his reputation was in dire need of anything like that, but there is still something to be said when you're largely an independent guy and the big mainstream company puts eyeballs on you. I'm sure this was a good thing for Mobius's career, just by sheer visibility. You know, it's good for him. So that happens. So yeah, it's so that part was cool. I think that was well done. And then also just the nature of it being like a one shot, or in this case broke up into a 2-issue miniseries. I think it's a good point that it doesn't feel like a cash grab really at all, which so many of these things can feel like that sometimes, or have a real gimmick to it. I mean, the only gimmick, I guess, is that, if you want to call it a gimmick, is putting Mobius and Stan Lee together. I feel like is a little gimmicky, you know, because they generally wouldn't work together and maybe shouldn't work together. But you know what? It worked, I think, here. It actually panned out for this one shot anyway. So I like that it wasn't gimmicky. And I think Stan really put his like best foot forward to make an adult themed series. And maybe to Genome's point, I'm not too up to speed on the timeline, but maybe this was around the time when there was that scandal of, who did you say again?
Jim Baker.
Jim Baker. Didn't they just make a movie with him?
Baker and
Oh, did they?
the Bakers.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, because is Tammy Faye his girl? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Used to wear the clown makeup. Yep, she was
Yeah.
famous.
so
Cried all the time.
Makeup. A lot of makeup.
So maybe it was a hot button thing. These kind of zealot preacher types that don't have scruples. So maybe it was a hot button issue, and that's why he leaned so hard into it. But it seemed like he tends to kind of hit these cultural buttons even in the 60s Marvel stuff. So it seems like he was going for that again. And I think he a little heavy-handed, fair enough, but not too dumbed down. And I don't think done like distastefully or not with any thought. I think he handled it pretty respectfully overall and took it seriously. So that was cool. Good on Stan, for like trying to, like I said, I think maybe his goals are maybe a little, or his aim was a little more than what his pen is actually capable of doing. But, hats off to him for giving it a good try. He came pretty close to really nailing it. So yeah, as far as those aspects of the concept go, I think it was good. There's not a lot of negatives to it. Any points that it doesn't earn is just for, absence of something really stellar, not any punishment points. So I would give it a 4. I think it's a pretty good outing in the concept department. And that's right, Bill. There's not much that I can't make a wrestling analogy out of. Thank you.
I always spot a true mark. Yeah. Roger, what was your concept score again?
3.5.
3.5. And you're a 4, right, Kenny?
Yeah. And Mr. Miracle, who's doodling away there at his piece yet to be unveiled, but will be unveiled soon. I think it is your time to weigh in on the conceptual prowess of this book, and just make note that your mic is muted.
Well, okay. There's a few things I disagree with. Like Mobius, yeah, he was a little bit on the outside, but I think he's probably just as old as Stan Lee. I don't know, maybe a little bit younger. But he'd been in comics for a long time. I don't think it was like the new avant-garde guy coming in. It was just like, whoa, this guy is going to work for Marvel Comics. Seems like his weird, but you can see by his illustrations, he is a master illustrator. None of that stuff was traced, David. He drew that helicopter. That's just, the other stuff is just his style, right? What am I trying to think here? Concept. When I was reading that back stuff in the book, they essentially he met Stan Lee at Comic-Con that they were both attending, right, signing comics and stuff. And Stan Lee was like, "Hey, let's do a book together." And then everybody was like, "Oh, wow, that'd be great." And that's how it started. And I think Stan Lee was probably pretty jealous of John Byrne because of the last Galactus story that was going on in Epic Comics at this time. And I know Stan really, really had this thing for the Silver Surfer and Galactus and wanting them to be his baby only. Like he was really mad when Byrne wrote that one-shot Galactus and that one-shot Silver Surfer because that was the first time that he hadn't written a story that was Silver Surfer. And then when Byrne started publishing the last Galactus story, I think that probably really upset Stan. So he took it on himself, being like, "You're not the only person that can take these characters and do an adult comic book with it, and I'll even put it in Epic." And they were like, "Well, maybe we can't put it in Epic because the last Galactus story is going on, and that would be confusing for people." But they published it as a 2-shot, and man, I think if you're thinking about the last Galactus story versus this story, I mean, they're both right on par with one another. I think it was a real duel-off between masters on who was the best surfer writer. Concept of this book, like just doing something with such a more artistic name, like big name guy like Mobius that was revered by all these avant-garde people, I guess, if you want to use Kenny's word for it. really great, really fun. Sorry, I'll stop looking at the drawing. I'll look at the camera. Yeah. So, was it a cash grab? No, I don't feel like it was. I think it was an opportunity for Stan to work to work in an adult medium that she didn't really get much of a chance to do. And I think it was Mobius's chance to work and prove himself in a more Main Street comic world, which he did quite well. And I think pairing those two up, yin and yang, but they just worked perfectly well. And yeah, peanut butter and jelly on this one. And I gave, let's see, get ink on my book. I gave the concept of this whole book 3.5. Right, good concept. Like that it was outside the style. Like that they picked these particular characters that they did. Maybe a little heavy-handed in the story, but still, I gave it a 3.5 for the concept. I think conceptually, these two, if it wasn't for these two masters writing this book, it may not have worked. 3.5.
Fair enough. Well done. And Mr. Genome, why don't you weigh in on the concept for us?
Oh, weightiness. Well, believe it or not, this got my highest score of the evening for the book. I think I usually look at the concept as more with a businessman's eye of books a lot of times because, at the end of the day, this is about selling copy. And I think as far as doing that, it probably did pretty well. I don't know the exact numbers of it, but I'm sure it sold gangbusters. And when you take two legendary artists in the comic book medium and put them together on something, that's a good concept. And they're not doing it with some obscure characters either. These are like mainstream characters, but you can see them in a different light than you normally do. Now, once again, Mobius wasn't as well known over here. I think he's already done some Dark Horse stuff at this point, but yeah, for anyone in the comics they know who he is, especially older. And since this book is aimed at more of an older crowd anyway, it kind of makes sense. So you got two of the old guard kind of coming in there. But great concept, man. You take a superior artist and a well-known one, at least in artist circles, and the progenitor or whatever of comicdom, that at least the face of it that everyone knows, and you throw them on a book and you stamp their names on the front of it. I mean, what's not to love? That's a great concept. And it wasn't, it may have been a cash grab, like every book is released can be, equated to that if it sells well, but I don't know. Stan obviously had something to say here, whether it was heavy-handed or not. And I gave him some props for his chutzpah. He said it, and he probably ruffled some feathers doing it. So, hey, good for you. If you got a vision, if you want to say it, just say it. Get it out there and don't beat around the bush. And he didn't beat around the bush here. Another thing, too, is this did not seem like a story like where the editors, I'm sure no one was editing them, like were afraid to talk to Stan. You know what I mean? He wasn't just printing garbage because his name was Stan Lee, right? He actually had something he wanted to say here in a pretty decent story in a two-parter. So that's cool. I can dig on that because, at this point, he could just say, I'm going to write this book, and who's going to say no to him, right? And whatever garbage came to his head. So he had some kind of loftier, weightier goals here. It comes off well, and I think it's a good concept. He didn't cheese out on the art. He didn't cheese out on making it a 4-part series, for even further cash grabbery. You put two legends on a book with at least one legendary character. I always thought Galactus is a lot more legendary than Silver Surfer, but that's just me. And put it to print and then give it to Epic. They didn't do it in the regular Marvel universe. So kudos to that. Let them explore, like you said, some more meaningful ideas. Sometimes maybe they might be a little misguided or not. So I gave it a 4. I think it's an excellent concept. It's nothing really new here other than maybe this being outside of regular continuity, which is kind of cool. But yeah, great thing. You put a great artist, you put a pretty competent to great writer on it, and you throw a different spin on humanity, and all of a sudden humanity looks worse than Galactus. So it takes a special feat of writing to do that. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4. I think it's the strongest aspect of the book, and it was a great idea.
Pow. Very nice. Okay, and chat, if you want to go ahead and drop your thoughts on the concept of this book, if you want to reflect that with a number, you can go ahead and do that. And since, sometimes I also not just throwing a number at the concept can be tricky for chat folk. Sometimes you have to expound on it, but
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that. And as you do, I think as those numbers come in, and we'll shout those out in a little bit. I think we should just maybe cruise right on into our overall numbers. Just kind of sum up the parts on this bad boy, and then call it a night. As we approach the 120-minute mark of comic book review action. Okay, where do we leave? I guess that would be me. Overall, baby, it's gonna be high because the covers were great. This one a little cooler than this one, but still great on both ends. And some of Stan's best writing that I've seen. He put his big boy pants on, self-announcing their powers and all that stuff. It was really cool. And I thought he did a pretty good job. Nice story. Lofty themes in there. Mobius, what can we say? The hype is real, man. The guy has the reputation because he is a masterful artist. Great, unique style. Awesome concept. Pretty on point as far as I'm concerned, too. And yeah, I think even if we aggregate my numbers, it's going to be between a 4 and a 4.5. And, I think with all being said, I think I'll land on a 4 for my final number. I could just as easily put it up to 4.5. But I think I'm not going to get too excited. I'm going to say 4 as an overall grade for this pretty cool book. Pow. Mr. M, the CC.
Overall for this book, let me see here. Okay, so as always, one of my big things for the overall, would I recommend reading this for anybody? Hell yeah, especially if you're a fan of these characters. But even if you're a fan of comics in general, you're going to enjoy this book. You may not become your most favorite book ever, but it's definitely a different take on these kinds of characters, and these two characters in particular. The art is very different than what your normal, John Buscema, Jack Kirby kind of comic book art style is. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I love those guys. But it was cool to kind of just take a little bit of there could be all kinds of different artists going on this. Maybe we'll, so it very cool. Big fan of Mobius, big fan of heavy metal, big fan of all that stuff that he was doing back then. And I gave the overall a 4.
4. Strong grade. I like it.
Strong grade. Yeah.
Mr. Genome, you had a couple above, a little. It wasn't all straight high marks across the board for you, but still good marks. Where do you think it fell overall?
I got to agree with the way that Dave leads that off too. Would I recommend this book? Yes, I certainly would. I'm not going to give this like a perfect 5 or even a 4.5 or even a 4. But it doesn't take away that this book is definitely a worthy read. It's definitely interesting, and it's the book I'll probably read again at some point in the future. So that's the ultimate measure of a comic book, in my opinion. So the covers, one is great. Oh, wrong hand there. One is great. The other is good. Leaning towards great, but good. I do enjoy the first cover better. It's just so epic. So I gave the covers respectively a 4 and a 3. So it came right into a 3.5 or whatever. So there's that. I put those away now. For the story, I gave it a 3. It was a little heavy-handed in spots. And it was it's funny to watch Stan Lee try to write bleak when he doesn't that's not really his style usually. It's leave it to Frank Miller or something, or Alan Moore. But it was interesting. It was a different take, a little heavy-handed in spots. But it was interesting. I did like the ending. I thought the ending was kind of cool, how he had to shoulder the burden and become the bad guy just so he could be the actual hero, and no one even know it, and he's off alone. Great whiz bang ending there to the book, or the books, should I say? And I gave the story a 3. Interior art was a little hit or miss for me. Some panels were absolutely amazing, and once again, Dave was right. There's tons of splash pages in here, and I can't find a bad splash page in this book. So wasn't crazy about his more human characters for the most part, but everyone's sufficiently diverse. There was a really light hand to this too. There's no like super bold Kirby lines in this book. It's very, Kenny was mentioning that too. So I do like the line work in there. Very lightly inked. This is probably the most lightly inked book I've ever read. As far as at least a Marvel comic, so looks cool. I like this, the treatment. So Galactus and Surfer look absolutely incredible. Everyone else is serviceable to subpar in some ways, but overall, I liked the interior art. All right, it was a 3 for me. For the concept, I gave it a really good score of 4. You putting 2 legends on the same book, on 2 pretty decent characters, on an interesting and different story, and you have a recipe for success. I'm sure it sold a lot of units. And even outside of business, I don't know. It was just, I think it was a good idea. It was an idea whose time has come. And as Jackson was saying, the Silver Surfer run, volume 2 or 3 at this point? I think it was volume 2. It already started again. It was off to the races. So pretty good timing, too, to release that. So I gave that a 4. So my overall score, I let math aside. And I think math is pretty much correct. I gave it 3.5. Really, really good set of books, though, and definitely recommended. Like, this is like a pair of books that just about anyone who likes comics could just have in their collection and never feel bad about it. I can't think of anyone who would just want to get rid of these books, regardless if you like the story amazingly or not. They're just 2 solid books with some of the last work, and maybe the only time these 2 ever got together for any kind of project. So that in itself is kind of interesting. So 3.5 recommended books for sure. Great picks there, Kenny.
Oh, thanks. Bringing up the rear, Roger. You package up and tie a bow on your thoughts on this as an overall book. What would you say?
Will do, my friend. Will do, my friend. Real quick though, the one thing that got me about this particular set of comics is that there's no weakness here. There's not I would say a weak spot. There are issues. There are, hair split problems here, but there's no weaknesses here. I don't think I think Genome hit it on the head. There's like, if you have this in the collection, you're not going to say like I did with Human Fly. I got to jettison this because I'm never going to read it again. I don't enjoy. There's something in here for everybody. When you look at the art and how it's kind of like has that science fiction-y, fantasy, Twilight Zone-y kind of vibe to it. I didn't think much of it at the time, but it works. The covers, I think the amalgamation score was 4. This one, I agree, this is epic stuff. I mean, you see this, you're a Galactus fan, you're buying this, right? You're getting this. That's it. There's no two ways about it. And this is good, but not this. The story, again, the dialogue, I was super impressed with. I really liked, the way that Stan, again, he's not ham-fisted here. He's very, very expounding on all kinds of moral issues, and the Surfer, speaks so eloquently, and Galactus is very terse but very direct and very obviously very godlike in his attitudes. Power makes me a god, not benevolence. That kind of dialogue really expounds to me the meanings behind what he's trying to get here, and the foils that he used. I thought that was really well done. A bit heavy-handed. I mean, I think it was more heavy-handed than it had to be, but a small detraction. Art, again, I was so impressed with it. His Galactus is so good. I mean, from the back, from the front. I mean, the way that he portrays scale and even the buildings. Whenever they were thrown up, not thrown apart, but blasted it apart. You can see the particles go on. It was just so well done. I mean, there wasn't like umpteen amount of action here, but it was subtle. It was subtle in some parts, but there was enough for even superhero fans to enjoy, and a lot of nice little concepts for the more in-depth kind of thinker and reader to enjoy as well. Concept, I just went through that. Again, a foil for Stan Lee. Maybe it's a cautionary tale, but it has, like Gino said, chutzpah. He went out on a limb. Maybe I don't agree with him, but he definitely used this to bring out some not pen in issues, but pen in story that he wanted to portray, and this was a perfect venue for that. Overall, I'm going to give it a 4. I just don't find any weaknesses, and everything is way above, serviceable, way above standard. Definitely, I would say if you're a fan of Galactus, Stan Lee, science fiction, any of those, I would pick this up. I think you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a recommend, man. It's definitely a recommend. And it's not a big investment too. Sometimes like starting a new series can be daunting. It's a brisk 2 issues, man. Can't beat it. It was so good. Gino bought it
I
twice.
forgot. I should not have mentioned Human Fly. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
you got to strike that from the screen, right?
Human Fly artist. I don't know exactly what it meant, but it really was making me laugh. As a child, Roger was traumatized by a Canadian stuntman. Is that Human Fly?
That's the Human Fly.
Oh, is that Lemieux Majors? But
Yo.
Oh man,
that is funny. That's interesting. Richard Gere's character in Breathless remake was a huge service. He even read the comic to his French lover in bed. Wow.
He did. He was just obsessed with the Silver Surfer. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, that trick never worked for me. Trying to read my my comics to my lover in bed. Never got.
Yeah.
If they find out you even have comics, that kept the lovers out of your bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That never worked for me. That's for sure.
Yeah. Geek culture is a relatively new phenomenon. It's amazing.
Hey, I got a comic collection. You want to come to my room? No,
Yeah.
I won't even go in the house.
Now you got to promise to give them like MCU spoilers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you went in my room like, no, you greasy nerd, get away from me.
Before we go around the wheel and get parting words and we find out what's going on with future endeavors with the gang, those of you that stuck around are going to get the special treat from the end of a Grader'S Notes episode, and we're going to see what our man Mr. Miracle has been scribbling away at all this time. It often is themed with the book that we cover, so
Man, I
let's
was
see.
hoping you forget.
That's that.
Did
Now's
not
not
work
the
out
time
for
to
me
draw
this
Bugs
time.
Bunny, Miracle.
It did not go well for me this time. I'm not happy with this guy one bit. Terrible. So terrible.
Oh, that's not bad.
The line drawing was really good, but I totally fucked it up.
It's the best Iceman I've ever seen.
Terrible. Exactly.
You
Right?
got a
He
little
looks
Iceman
like
vibe.
fucking Iceman.
See.
Should have put Firestar and Spider-Man in there. Terrible.
Just turn the board into one of those ice slides and you're fine.
Yeah, there you go. Just
No,
I really thought,
underselling it. It's colored pretty badass, and that pose, I like that pose with the forward rising up.
It would have been. It's just like no. I just told like they should have left us
pretty
line
good.
drawing.
Actually,
It
that's
would
pretty
go
good.
better.
I'm messing with you, man. That's pretty good.
I like drawing.
I wish I could draw 1/10
Caesar
that good.
platitudes. Terrible.
I never pull any punches.
Yeah,
Terrible.
I tell
I've
you,
done much better on this show. I've done.
Oh yeah, you put out some marvelous stuff. I feel like I don't have, not that any of my, drawing is really top shelf, but Silver Surfer I have an especially hard time drawing because like, whenever you draw him, you never really just want to draw him like standing there or a bust image.
Yeah.
Really doesn't nail it for Surfer because he's so plain there. You need him on his board, and it's hard to draw a figure flying on a surfboard. It's like it's tough to navigate. So
And then a mirror figure, right? Like a mirrorized figure. Like
he's a
he
tricky. It doesn't look like there's much to him, but he's tough to draw. So
terrible.
well, let's turn things around. One thing you are that everyone loves are them speculation vids, them undervalued sleeper picks.
Yeah, we'll have a new one tomorrow for sure.
So you see that?
Yeah.
He knows. He always lines them up after Grader'S notes because he's going to bring all that Grader'S notes traction. Can you try
Spoiler alert.
Can you do me a favor? Can you try to make the traction go backwards? Because he's got the biggest show of all of us combined.
I know he does.
You don't need our traction.
Oh man, yeah. I usually get like 300-400 hits on my Grader'S notes.
Yeah,
But
I
people
told you couldn't invite me back.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'll have another undervalued tomorrow, and I think it's a good show. Some good stuff. Definitely some cheap stuff that could pay off. Like always. Right? That's the idea. Deep spec, man. Let's buy these books when they're $5, not when they're $50.
Yep.
It works.
Mr.
How about you?
Gino. Mr. Gino, what's cooking on Genome Presents or Genome Gaming for that matter?
Genome Gaming is doing well. I've almost got half of the subs on that channel that I have on my main channel, and I still only do like 1 or 2 videos a week on there. But yeah, still just editing a lot full time. We'll have the Friday night show tomorrow on the main channel, so be there, be square, or I should be doing it anyway, with Jay and oh no, we're not doing the movie on Friday. It's just the regular Friday night show. We'll probably be doing the Conan live stream maybe this Saturday, but I haven't got coordinated with everybody. But we're going to be watching the original Conan for a live watch party. So that should be on Saturday if we do it at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, but Genome Gaming is doing bounds better. They actually get views and hits on that channel for whatever reason. So, and it requires very little work for me. So I'm definitely focusing more on that. What little I'm still not focusing on it full time. So, but it's doing much better than my main channel. So there we go.
There you have
The
it.
Barbarian.
That's because comic books, people need to have a very refined palate to appreciate comic books. Any Jimbo Jabroni can play video games. That's why.
That's true. That's true. They're taking a talent. You don't have to put quarters in the machine anymore. So
yeah.
You know, when I was in high school, I worked at a video store, like a real video store, video cassettes, please rewind. And a buddy of mine that was there, who was also a nerd, him and I had a contest to see who could watch Conan the Barbarian the most times. And like, because we worked the later one we were allowed to play, it was just a little video store. And I stopped watching it about 126 times. I think Brian went like about 160. It's pretty epic. We did it again at Bloodsport as well.
Bloodsport, oh, that's a little more rough. I'm having flashbacks from high school too. I tell you what, if you don't even like watching Conan, just listen to the soundtrack over and over, and that's worth listening to.
Soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
the
I believe
score
he
is
doesn't
great.
say a word until 22 minutes into it, though. He doesn't say anything like a word for 22 minutes of that movie.
Yeah, and Gore's right. The score of the Conan film
yeah.
is fantastic.
Yeah, that was the
Giant
best
faraway
part.
horns and kettle drums everywhere. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes you want to stab someone with a sword. Mr. Roger, as far as your channel's activity, I know I've been glued to your John Byrne series with you, Jay Hood, and the third man. His name is
Jason from Heroes to Icons.
Heroes to Icons. Yes. So I know that's a winner. Is there any more installments left on that?
There's one more left. It'll be on From Heroes to Icons, probably 2 or 3 weeks.
Got it.
Yeah. We're going through. I did the 70s burn, Jay Hood did the 80s, and Jason's going to do the 90s and beyond. So that was on Tuesday. Yesterday, I did a short live stream with Jerry the Jitterbug and Night Tiger because he worked on one of my comics, and we just sort of sort of wanted to wrap that up. And today I did the roundup, and I showed I picked up a Captain America 117, so I showed that because I'm trying to complete the whole set. But I don't really have anything until next week, until next Thursday. I'm going to do a special video, but nothing else going on for right now.
Cool.
All right. Well, fantastic. No real definitive plans as far as this channel. The next Grader'S Notes is probably the best place to find me. Aside from that is, impromptu if I have some flea market bounties to share. So stay tuned on that. But that's about it on this end. And until next time, where we will be covering X-Men Teen Titans right there. We are the Grader'S Notes crew, and we appreciate your patronage to the channel and to the program. Have a great night, y'all.
Night, everyone.
Good night.